All right, is everybody ready? Yep. I call to order the Gladstone City Council special meeting for August 15th, 2017. It's 5:45 p.m. Tonight, our agenda is, regular agenda will be to discuss the fire department grant award acceptance. Then we're going to adjourn for a joint work session with the Planning Commission to review the Transportation System Plan, which is also called the TSP. We'll go over selection process for the Planning Commission vacancy. Staff will introduce us to the new city website. We'll discuss the agenda for August 22nd, which will be another joint work session with Planning Commission to review the Parks Master Plan and the draft construction design and standards. And then a motion to begin the process of filling the vacancies per Chapter 7, Section 33 of the City Charter, and Chapter 4.03 of the Gladstone Municipal Code. Is that right? No. What else were we talking about? The agenda. Forget that last part. Jackie, could you please call the roll?
Tammy.
Oh, Tammy, excuse me.
Counselor Milch.
Here.
Counselor Neese.
Here.
Counselor Tracy.
Here.
Counselor Reisner.
Here. Counselor
McMahon.
Here.
Counselor Mercero.
Here.
Mayor Stemple.
Here, could everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. So the first item on our agenda is the Fire Department Grant Award Acceptance. Staff?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So this evening I have Chief O'Connor and Battalion Chief Jeff Smith that are here to start our evening off with some very good news. So I'm going to ask our Fire Chief to deliver that good news.
All right. Thank you, Jackie. Tom O'Connor, Fire Chief, City of Gladstone, and I'm joined by Jeff Smith, not only a Fire Battalion Chief, but apparently a very talented grant writer. I think this is Jeff's 7th or 8th grant award since he's been at Gladstone Fire. So I prepared, and hopefully everybody had a chance to look over the staff report from August 8th. It was about a 2.5-pager discussing some history and background. For those in the audience, we submitted for 3 positions to FEMA under what's called the Staffing for Adequate Fire and Emergency Response Grant, the SAFER grant. We submitted for 3 positions earlier in 2017, and we were, surprisingly to me, less surprisingly to Jeff, awarded over $480,000 for staffing over a 3-year grant period of performance. We had budgeted for 2 fire captain positions, and this will allow us to do 3 and utilize the funding for those positions as matching funds, and actually wind up saving us over $150,000 in our general fund budget while still hiring 3 versus 2. I think one of the probably the big questions for any grant is what happens when the grant runs out. In this case, this would take us from what was budgeted for 5 FTE to 6 during the grant period, and unless there's some other grant funding or some other revenue stream and a need identified, I would anticipate after the grant funding runs out that we're back to the 5 FTE. 3 years down the road, there'll be lots of strategic planning and standards of cover and other things in the meantime. But really, that's kind of the gist of it, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions?
Yes. On the because of the grant you're getting and then use the FTE. Now, will you be going using any of the levy money for anything else, or will that just be left aside and you will just strictly use the award grant money that you're getting?
Well, we'll continue to use the levy money. Sorry. We'll continue to use levy money as is. Actually, Chief Smith's position is the levy FTE right now. As it said in the report, if his intentions are as he continues to state, he retires in August 2018. Would probably make sense to probably move one of the captain positions into that levy and then hire, we have to decide what to do with that 6 FTE. I don't anticipate hiring another training chief because I think with 3 captains and 2 full-time chiefs we'll be able to distribute that load properly. So it's a question of what do we do with the 6 FTE for the rest of the period. You know, some would say that all your positions should be general fund, though in my experience, levy positions, that's why you have levies, is for people, and then you talk about either general fund money or bonds for stuff.
But we also don't want to count on that money because it could be gone, because the
That's
voters
true.
could say, you know,
Yeah.
they don't want it in the future.
It's true.
I mean,
We'll know
if
by
you're
then.
getting award grants
Yeah.
money.
Well, that is the one, I would say, danger in the grant, is if somehow our levy doesn't get renewed. And that's always a threat in levies. I think we're well supported, and I think we'll be talking about that here pretty soon in the fall, maybe even at the town hall, and then we'll be planning in January for the levy campaigns for police and fire, which are two separate levies.
And that goes November is when the vote is for that.
Yeah,
for
November 2018. The
2019.
current levy expires June 30, 2019.
Yeah.
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
So the savings that we'll realize out of the budget for this year and next, what's planned with that money?
Well, I wouldn't say there's a solid plan. There's definitely ideas. When somebody says, "Hey, you have 157,000 more than you thought. What are you going to do?" Really, had a few ideas and discussions. Until the council chooses to accept the grant, it's not real yet. Some of that will probably go into trying to beef up our paid-on-call staffing even more, because this will allow us to have a captain on duty 24/7, and I don't want them to be on duty by themselves. So we'll try to have a larger paid-on-call force to have that second person working with them around the clock. That's part of the plan. Some of it will probably go back into some capital that we cut a little bit to generate the captain position money, as you remember, through the budget process. But I haven't identified completely, and of course the city administrator could say that maybe fire department's doing so well with grants and other things that some of that should come back to general fund outside the department. So there's other things to consider. It's not all about the fire department necessarily.
Thank you.
And it could help with public safety too, and put some money more into that with our structure and our infrastructure, or signs or whatever that we need around our.
Yeah, you could always spend some of that money on stuff, on capital items, yeah, or small material and services items. Those initially allocated for personnel, and I'm going to try to be respectful of that. I mean, we do have a bunch of folks besides our full-time people, and like I said, part of this trying to be a little bit more vibrant in our response model is going to be increasing the size of our paid-on-call workforce, and that's going to take time. We're talking about a potential 8-person academy starting here in a few months. We're going to be doing 2 a year, so there's a lot to think about. So once this becomes a real, hopefully tonight, then we'll start trying to reallocate the money.
And I think it's important to realize that there will be a savings, but we don't want to spend it before we have the savings. But the important point is there will be a process in place on how that money will be funded. And Chief actually has been very open to considering some of that going to other services. But that's something that will be determined after we're assured that we will have that money and there is a savings.
And as a note, I mean, it's a savings and another firefighter full-time on there. So it's not like you're just hiring the 2 and saving $157,000. You're hiring 3 and saving $157,000 over just having the 2. So I think that's important that's clear. We're getting another person and savings through this grant.
Yeah, that's correct, and I think what's really helpful with that is it allows us to keep Chief Smith in his day role, because we are, believe it or not, we're in succession planning and transition planning for his departure. We're a year out. Having to, if we had discussed, and he was amenable to this, about him moving to shift so we could get that 24/7 coverage, and that would have been great for the citizens in our response model. It would have caused some issues with the transition planning over the years. So this is really the best of both worlds, yeah.
So you'd mentioned this is your 8th grant that you won?
Over $3 million.
Over $3 million. Just you.
You should have a cookie.
Yeah, you should have a couple cookies.
At least.
Is he available to help with other grants? We want some big grants for infrastructure.
He's quite talented, I will say that.
Thank you very much for all the work that you've put into these grants.
A recommendation, or a thought anyway, you can consider it if it's a recommendation or not. You had a model for 2 chiefs, and I'm assuming that you had some goals and objectives for that.
Mhm.
I would look at that, okay, and then when the 2 years get sick past, when you look at what the 3 chiefs did, whether you in fact met the goals or not. And if you went over the goals, did more, then that would be a reason to recommend having 3 or going back to 2.
Sure.
Any more questions? Would somebody like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to move that the City of Gladstone accept the Federal Emergency Management Agency SAFER Grant Award of $481,323 to the Gladstone Fire Department and authorize the hiring of 1 additional Fire Department FTE full-time employee to meet the terms of the grant over the 3-year period of performance.
I second that.
Motion was made by Counselor McMahon and seconded by Counselor Mercero. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Pass.
Thank you.
Cool. All right. Thank you, Jeff.
Take a cookie.
Take some cookies, please. Do you want to go over the process right now, or do you want to adjourn and then we can talk about it?
Well, I'll just highlight real quickly that I think what we want to do, because it's a joint meeting for this evening and we don't have room for everybody on the dais, that Public Works Director Jim and I will rearrange the room down here so you guys can have a recess until 6:30. So we'll have Planning Commission and City Council sitting down here with our consultant doing the presentation, and then when we are done with our agenda and Planning Commission agenda, they need to convene on the dais for their regular meeting to finish out the evening. So
Okay.
I think right now we can take a recess.
Okay, would someone like to adjourn our regular meeting?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn the regular meeting and take a recess.
Second.
Motion was made by Counselor Neese and seconded by Counselor Tracy. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned at 5:57 p.m.